This is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. The dominant spirit, however, that haunts this enchanted region and seems to be commander-in-chief of all powers of the air is the apparition on horseback without a head. Having been buried in the churchyard, the ghost rides forth to the scene of the battle in nightly quest for his head, and after searching the night must rush back in speed to get back to the churchyard before daybreak. The specter is known by all country firesides by the name of the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. In this sleepy village there lived for a time a worthy wight of the name Ichabod Crane, who tarried in Sleepy Hollow for the purpose of instructing the children of the vicinity. He was a native of Connecticut, a state which supplies the Union with pioneers for the mind as well as the forest, and a perfect master of Cotton Mare's History of New England Witchcraft, in which, by the way, he most firmly and potently believed. He delighted in listening to the marvelous tales of the old Dutch wives, tales of ghosts and goblins, and the many hauntings of fields, brooks, bridges, and houses, and particularly of the Headless Horseman, or Galloping Hessian of the Hollow, as I sometimes called him. He would delight them equally by his stories of witchcraft, dire omens, and hauntings of Connecticut. In this village, Ichabod had found a sweetheart to court, an heiress named Katrina von Tassel. This meant that he also had to face his many country rivals for her affections, including a Herculean specimen renowned for his horse skills, nicknamed Brom Bones. One day, Ichabod received an invitation to the Von Tassel Manor for a quilting frolic. Quickly, the school day was cut short, and the young scholars turned loose on the countryside. Ichabod took the great care in his appearance and even borrowed a broken-down old horse named Gunpowder in order to arrive in a manner befitting the woman he loved. But more charms than the beautiful Katrina awaited Ichabod upon his arrival to the Von Tassel farm. The ample charms of a genuine Dutch country tea table in this beautiful time of autumn. The heavily laden table featured sweet cakes and shortcakes, ginger cakes and honey cakes, and there were apple pies and peach pies and pumpkin pies, besides slices of ham and smoked beef, and many other delicacies this historian is too much in a hurry to enumerate. But luckily, Ichabod was in no such hurry, and paid ample attention to each delicious item before turning his attention to Katrina and the evening's dancing, while Brom Bones sat sulking. When the dance was at the end, Ichabod enjoyed gossiping with neighbors over former times and drawing out long stories about the war. But all these tales of wartime were nothing to the tales of ghosts and apparitions that succeeded. The chief part of the stories, however, turned upon the favorite specter of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman, who, it was said, tethered his horse nightly among the graves in the churchyard. These tales included harrowing stories of races between the men and the horsemen, including a tale from Brom Bones himself, who reported he challenged the spirit to a race for a bowl of punch, and would have won it too, for Daredevil, his horse, beat the goblin horse all hollow. But just as they came to the church bridge, the Hessian bolted and vanished in a flash of fire. The frolic soon came to a close, and the guests hurried homeward, until Ichabod only lingered, according to the custom of country lovers, to have a teat-for-teat with the heiress. What passed at this interview I will not pretend to say, for in fact I do not know. Something, however, must have gone horribly wrong, and it was the very witching time of the night that Ichabod, heavy-hearted and crestfallen, pursued his travels homewards, the hour as dismal as himself. In the dark shadow of the grove, on the margin of the brook, he beheld something huge something misshapen and towering. It stirred not, but seemed gathered up in the gloom like some gigantic monster ready to spring upon the traveler. The hair on Ichabod's head rose in terror. What was there to be done? To turn and fly now was too late, and besides, what chance was there escaping a ghost or goblin if it was? Summoning up, therefore, a show of courage, he demanded in a stammering accent, "Who are you?" He received no reply. But just then the shadowy object of alarm put itself in motion, and with a scramble and a bound stood at once in the middle of the road. Though the night was dark and dismal, yet the form of the unknown might now in some degree be ascertained. He appeared to be a horseman of large dimensions, and mounted on a black horse of powerful frame. There was something in the moody and dogged silence of this mysterious and appalling companion. It was soon fearfully accounted for on mounting a rising ground which brought the figure of his fellow traveler in relief against the sky. Ichabod was horror-stricken on perceiving that he was headless. But this horror was still more increased on observing that the head, which should have rested on his shoulders, was carried before him on the pommel of his saddle. His terror rose in desperation. Away then they dashed through the thick and thin, stones flying and sparks flashing at every bound. An opening in the trees now cheered, and with the hopes that the church bridge was just at hand. He recollected the place from when Brom Bones' ghostly competitor had disappeared. If I can only reach that bridge, Ichabod thought, I am safe. Just then he heard the black steed panting and blowing close behind him. He even fancied that he had felt his hot breath. Another convulsive kick to the ribs of old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge, and now Ichabod cast a convulsive look behind him to see if his pursuer would vanish, according to the rule, in flash of fire and brimstone. Just then he saw the goblin rising in his stirrups, and in the fact he was hurtling his head at him. Ichabod endeavored to dodge this horrible missile, but it was too late. It encountered his cranium, and with a tremendous crash, he was tumbling headlong into the dust, and Gunpowder, the black steed, and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind. The next morning, the old horse, Gunpowder, was found without his saddle and with the bridle under his feet, soberly cropping the grass at his master's gate. Ichabod did not make his appearance at breakfast. Then the dinner hour came, but no Ichabod. When the villagers went looking for evidence of what happened to the schoolmaster, they found furious hoofprints and the hat of the unfortunate Ichabod. And close beside was a shattered pumpkin. But no sight of Ichabod has ever been made again in the town of Sleepy Hollow. Some say Ichabod, embarrassed in his failure, moved on to a new town and a new life. Brom Bones, whenever the story was brought up, often smiled knowingly and laughed at the mention of the pumpkin. The old country wives, however, who are the best judges on these matters, maintain to this day that Ichabod was spirited away by supernatural means. Thank you.